Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, Council, I don't have any additions or corrections for you tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve the agenda as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Invocation, Oath Heights Covenant Church. Good evening.
Greetings, Mayor. As an active member of the Hutchinson Ecumenical Ministerial Association, I always want to express my appreciation to the City of Hutchinson for your openness to support the various faith communities and their expressions. The church family at Oak Heights Covenant Church upholds the city leaders, and the staff in our regular prayers, and I'm grateful to share this prayer this evening in your presence. Let's pray. Creator God, this evening, we give thanks for your provision of wisdom to light the paths of life. In the season of winter, when darkness can seem so prevalent and cloudy skies can mute our days, we pray for the bright clarity of all decisions and discussions this evening. As the late fall rain this year has blessed us with much needed moisture, let your wisdom flow through this room and these leaders. Now bless each council member as they carry out their work. I pray for Chad, Dave, Pat, Tim, and Mayor Gary. May they graciously listen to each item that is before them today and make clear decisions that will continue to assist this community in its growth. And as they give their time to the city for this work before them, may you bless their families in a special way in this season. We all pray that Hutchinson will continue to be a city where families make their homes, where children can learn and play and grow in safety, where people at whatever stage of life find care and compassion, and where all people thrive. May our city leaders have a sense of satisfaction in the work that will be accomplished this evening here as they leave tonight. I pray this in your gracious name. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognition of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? All right, public comment, citizens addressing the council, just please come forward and state your name and address for the record. All right, we have approval of minutes. We have council workshop of November 26, 2024. The regular meeting minutes of November 26, 2024. Truth in taxation hearing of December 3rd, 2024.
I wasn't here for that meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion by Chad, second by Dave to approve those minutes. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Say nay. Motion carries. Consent agenda will be done with one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is approval of the 2025 license renewals. B is approval of purchasing a leaf vacuum. C is approval of resolution number 15799, resolution to sell at auction surplus property, and that's from the Parks Department pickup. D is approval of Enterprise Center lease agreement, master relationship agreement, and non-disclosure agreement with LMAO DBA Smoky Dukes LLC. E is approval of out-of-state travel for Dan Proschek and Deon Carter to attend the United States Composting Council annual conference in Phoenix, Arizona from January 27th through the 30th, 2025. Appointment to Parks Recreation Community Education Board, Eric Thorson till August of 2027. Ann Lamaker to August of 2026. Gia's approval of items for Franklin Site Improvement Project, Letty number 3, project number 25-03. We have two resolutions underneath there. We have resolution number 15800, resolution ordering preparation of reports on improvements, and resolution number 15801, resolution receiving reports and calling hearing on improvements. H is claims, appropriations, and contract payments. Is there anything anybody wants pulled off for discussion?
I don't know if that was pulled off, but item E, $4,500 for the trip for 3 days to Arizona for compost. It seems like a lot of money to me. When we pull it off for discussion.
So you want it pulled off?
No, it doesn't need to be. You just, that seems expensive.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda then.
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Tim to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. We'll skip down to communications, request petitions. We have the review of truth and taxation hearing.
Give me 1 second. Mayor and Council, we do this kind of every year, following the hearing, or the truth and taxation hearing. We at least provide an opportunity for any additional comments and feedbacks, both from the public if there was a need to continue the hearing, which there wasn't, but then also for the city council, just to kind of reflect on that hearing that was conducted a week ago. And so I want to spend just a little bit of time kind of highlighting some of those things from the hearing last week, and then to answer any additional questions and get some additional direction from the city council as we look at finalizing our proposed budget and tax levy for 2025. So briefly, as you recall, in September, the preliminary tax levy was sent. The property tax effect, that's a statement everyone got in the mail, showed a city tax increase of 7.9%. At that time, the budget was balanced. What we discussed at the hearing last Tuesday was a revised budget that includes a 5.8% tax levy increase and a continued balanced budget. The city has adjusted its revenue and expense projections and eliminated roughly $183,750 in taxes since the preliminary budget was adopted in September. And one thing I do want to highlight, and because it does get brought up at every year at our truth and taxation hearing, we had some comments regarding valuation. I think it's just important for the public, and I'll try to reiterate now and maybe even in the spring, is that evaluations are really done in the springtime with the open book procedure. When you receive your notice in the mail regarding your value, that is the time you should be going and contesting it if you have any concerns on that evaluation. And so I just want to kind of highlight that, because I know a lot of people show up at the truth and taxation hearing, and that's not the purpose of the hearing. It's really to talk about the city's portion of the tax levy, of their tax levy bill, and our budget. And so just want to kind of reiterate that and the need for the public to really pay attention to the statement that they get in the spring. That's really the ideal time to encourage people to go to the county assessor's office, go through the open book procedure, ask some questions, and hopefully get some answers on why valuations are what they are. With that being said, we highlighted this at the hearing on Tuesday. There's really two large factors behind the levy increase. One is the general wage and benefit increase, along with some additional positions and adjustments that were made in that. And then the second factor was we added some dollars to our debt levy to account for a new fire ladder truck. That's really those two main factors that would contribute to that proposed now 5.8% tax levy increase for 2025. Just some additional things. The 2025 budget includes additional fire inspector, firefighter position, and a change in staff models at the DMV and in the engineering department. Both the DMV and engineering department were actually previously approved by the city council. The fire inspector, firefighter position has not been approved yet and is proposing to be approved through the budget cycle. The only reason I highlight that is one of the directions given to staff in the spring was to prepare a budget that really maintains the current services of the city. I guess that fire inspector, firefighter position would be something that's in addition to the proposed budget and would be over and above, I guess what I would say was our normal services for 2024. And so I think it's important just to highlight that to the council, to be fully transparent with you in regards to what was put into the budget for 2025. Staffing costs and capital needs continue to be the biggest driver of our budget. We continue to have healthy fund balances, and the fiscal condition of the city is healthy. The state's budget forecast is projecting a slight surplus for next year. However, if you pay attention to the news, there are some long-term challenges regarding the state budget that could come back to impact us in future years. It's not projected necessarily to have impact next year, but it could in 26 and 2027. Obviously, home values continue to increase, and we're continuing to see growth at all levels, and some of which we'll be talking about later tonight. And we do continue to see some impact on inflation and supply chain issues. So, quick review: when we looked at the preliminary budget back in September, this was what was proposed. This was what sent out. This is the impact that residents saw on their property tax statement. Within that was an 8.6% increase to the general fund and a 5.9% increase to our debt levy, with a total tax impact at the city level of a 7.9% increase. And then we highlighted, obviously, because the council has a final say on the EDA and the HRA levies. So from September until December, when we had our truth and taxation hearing, through conversations with department directors, a couple new revenue sources that came into the city, we made adjustments to our budget, which resulted in lowering that city tax levy by just under $184,000. And what's currently being considered for adoption at our next council meeting is a budget that includes a 5.8% tax levy increase for 2025. There was some comments and some feedback at that hearing, with a desire to potentially look at an even lower tax levy increase for 2025. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time tonight at least discussing some options that may be available to the council. And I think the one big thing is, and there's some feedback that we received from council members, is that funding for the new fire ladder truck. We've had that up on the board, where we're anticipating as a total cost of just under $2.1 million. We're looking at roughly 3 payment schedules between 25 and 27. You may recall the council made the decision to go ahead and purchase that, to move forward with the purchase of that in 2024. The biggest reason for that is that we would have seen, I think, anywhere from a $200,000 to $300,000 increase if we would have waited to 2025 based off emission standards. And so that was the decision that was made a few months ago, to go ahead, let's purchase the fire truck, and then we'll have a discussion on how we want to look at financing that. And so there's a couple different options that Andy and I have at least thrown out there for the council to discuss, consider tonight. One is just to continue with the debt levy as proposed. A second option that we'll go through is that you could use excess revenue within the water and sewer funds to pay for that without having to issue any debt. A second option, or additional option, would be to do an interloan fund. Basically, you're going to borrow money from water and sewer and then you'd pay that back over a period of time. We propose anywhere from 15 to 20 years. We propose a funding source of using some of the excess local government aid that we have not allocated in the past to pay for that. And we'll show some of that here tonight as we just kind of continue this discussion. But as you can see up here on the screen, this is what we're looking at for total costs. One of the options that we looked at, this would be an option that would consider not borrowing money or not increasing our debt levy. It was that we would use $600,000 out of reserves from our capital projects fund. Andy's at about a balance right now, about $2 million.
Yeah, roughly. Some of that's reserved.
So it was about $1 million, I think that's not reserved. So you'd be cutting that in half of, and then you would take the remaining 1.49 million out of our water and sewer funds. And we'll kind of highlight where that money comes from, what that looks like for fund balances within the water and sewer funds. This is kind of a 10-year forecast. This is looking at the water fund where we project to take out, once again, keeping in mind we've got $600,000 out of reserves from our capital fund. We take $168,000 in 2026, another $424,000, $25,000 in 2027. I think the important thing to keep in mind is what we're looking at for our estimated cash balances, and then what we've identified as a minimum cash balance. That's 50% of the next year's operating expenses plus any debt service. You can see that in the water fund, and as we'll show you in the sewer fund, those are very healthy balances to where we could use some of that excess fund balance to pay for that. I think that the thing you need to keep in the back of your mind, and it's the thing that we just don't know about, is there going to be any regulation within the water and the sewer world that's going to result in future capital needs? And so if you buy down or if you lower your cash balances in that, you may be faced, and if something comes up, once again, nothing that we know of in the next 4 to 5 years. But something could come up where we have to be looking to do some significant capital. And so if you do tap in the fund balances, there is a possibility that those balances might get to the level where, depending on what would be needed in the future, we would have to look at raising rates or borrowing for a future infrastructure improvement. Now, this fund balance takes into account our 5-year capital plan and everything that we have planned out for the next really 10 years, but there's a lot of unknowns in the water and the wastewater field. And so that's the water fund. This is the sewer fund where we show where that money's coming out. Once again, you see the estimated cash balance with our minimum cash, our target balance. We're well over that, in the tune of, on the sewer side, we're sitting at over $3 million in cash. Over and above what our minimum cash balance is, and you can see that 3 to 4 million in the water fund as well. So that's an option that we wanted to be able to present to the city council. The other option that we talked about is the allocation of our local government aid. We talked about this at the Truth in Taxation hearing. For 2025, we're projected to get just over 3.1 million. As you recall, the city has established a policy of which 50% of that is going into our general fund. That's helping to pay for the day-to-day operations of the city. And then the other 50% of that is going into our capital projects fund to assist in those large capital improvements. So from our facilities to playground to our miscellaneous maintenance fund, that's things like sidewalks, parking lots, alleys. That gets allocated to that. And then we currently right now have an undesignated dollar amount that for 2025 is just over 201,000. That's more or less money we've set aside for future projects that we have not identified as of today that we're going to use that money for. And so that goes into our capital projects fund that helps build a fund balance, and it leaves somewhat of a, if you want to call it, a rainy day fund for a future capital need of the city. And so when we talk about, one option is to continue with what was in their preliminary budget. That's to pursue new debt for a fire truck. That's one option. Option 2 is to take excess revenue from our water and wastewater funds. Option 3 would be to borrow money from your water or wastewater funds that you're going to pay back over a period of time. We would use this undesignated amount as that funding source for payback. Now, the downside of this is that if LGA gets cut, which we've seen in the past, that's likely one of the first areas that we're going to target for. So now you could be short of excess LGA, and so that means you either have to take that from one of the other funds that we've identified for LGA. Now, there's been no talks about cutting LGA. I can't say that's going to happen, but those of us who've been in local government long enough, there was no warnings in the past, and all of a sudden it was cut. So that's a possibility, just something you need to keep in the back of your mind. And so this is what, if you were to borrow the money, use that money to pay it back from that LGA, that's kind of what that would look like. And so we've got a 15-year payback to where you'd still have a little bit of room within there, and a 20-year. Once again, we're at that 201,000. You can kind of see what those annual loan payments. If we do borrow money, we do have to pay that back at an interest rate. That's, I think, what the current market. Yeah. So, or you could designate I guess another fund. So, those are some of the options that are available to us. One thing I will say, our first payment isn't due until next year. We don't have to make a decision in 2025. The only decision that we do have to make is that if we're going to borrow money, we do need to get that levy going with the adoption here this year, or we could wait till 2025 and just use reserves to make that first payment. So I'm highlighting this now with the caveat that you don't have to make a decision this year on how you want to allocate these funds. You can wait another year, see how things are going to make a final determination. We just have to remember that we have put the thing in motion to be bought. So wanted to provide you with some additional assumptions that you can take into consideration. So if we were to remove that debt portion of borrowing money for the fire truck, so we're going to eliminate that roughly $69,000. That comes out right here, out of this fund here. You can see that's the change from what we presented at the Truth and Taxation hearing on Tuesday, or last Tuesday. So you're looking at going from a 5.8% tax levy increase to a 5% tax levy increase by removing that debt payment that's associated with the fire truck that was in our preliminary budget. This is kind of what that looks like from a tax rate standpoint. We're looking at a roughly $153 impact to a home that's valued at $275,000. One of the things that we did want to highlight, there was something that was brought up at the meeting, was, okay, if you were to focus just on inflationary impact, I think the comment was made that's somewhere in that 2 to 2.5% tax levy increase. One thing I do want to highlight, the one thing that was not identified, was that right now wage growth is exceeding inflation. I know if I sent you the one report, on average you're looking at wage growth to be in that 3.8 to 4% increase, and that's projected to stay in that same area for 2025. So that's not consistent with what inflation is doing. Obviously, it plays a part in it, and also plays a part in what we've seen in some of the higher unemployment rates as well. But just for the council's knowledge, if we were to look at going with a 2.5% tax levy increase for next year, we're looking to have to come up with $220,000 in cuts out of our current budget. So that's the simple answer to that is freezing of probably wages, or reduction of wages, wage increases, without really looking into service cuts. One of the things that we did show you was, okay, if you wanted to eliminate the debt levy, the one additional service that we added outside of 2024 was that fire inspector, firefighter position. You can see that would lower it an additional about 1%, just over 1%, to a 3.9% increase. And here's another slide where just kind of showing you another example where if you keep the debt levy, if you got rid of that additional position that we added, now you're looking at about a 4.7% tax levy increase. So really we try to do our best to give you some options. There's obviously more that could be considered based off of any direction that we may get from the council. So this is what our future debt levy would look like without borrowing for a fire truck. And that's what it would look like when we do borrow, or if we were to borrow for a fire truck. So a lot of information, but we usually try to have at least somewhat of a follow-up following our truth and taxation hearing that was held last Tuesday to see, is there a desire for any specific changes from the city council between now and when we have to adopt our final tax levy and budget on the 19th. Obviously, there's a lot of information shared. I can go back to anything if you'd like me to. It's something Andy and I looked into. There's other things we could look at as well.
What is the total? I mean, we talked about positions. We're talking the DMV, which was going from a full-time to or part-time to full-time.
Yep.
Which was, do you have a total on that? I'm trying to remember that.
Was that 40,000?
45,000 increase.
And what did you have for the fire inspector?
It's about 94,000.
And then there was a IT, I think.
Yep, that's it.
Intern, just under 15,000 for that IT intern.
And the fire inspector, we haven't acted on that yet,
No.
correct?
No, we have not acted on that. We did act on the DMV position.
Is the fire inspector after you approve the 19th?
You don't have to. I mean,
Well,
that's
I mean,
our,
is that when we would?
that's our intention would be
Gotcha.
to approve it at that point.
Gotcha.
Because I think the focus is, I mean, we have almost $500,000 in employee salary raises, which 100,000 of that would be new positions, or in that.
150,000 roughly.
Right, and you know, Mr. Lauer, who was here last week, made a good point of salaries going up 3.8%. I look at the past 2 years with the health insurance, we were very strong on helping our employees with that. I contacted some of the larger industries, and they're at 2.9 to 3. And so I think I'd like to see that tightened up a little bit. And we were talking about, you know, the fire truck being part of this, where we could, you know, pay for that and fund that differently. But I think there still need to be some trimming done to this to get to that where I'd feel comfortable.
Well, you know, we're absolutely totally committed to the fire truck, and we save money by doing it early. I'll be totally honest, I don't know which way to go. I wish I had an answer that was crystal clear, but whether we borrow or we deplete the reserves, I guess that's why we get paid the big bucks. I'm not sure which is the route to go, because there's kind of an unknown there.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, Matt, if something comes down from the wastewater or from the water plant, we don't have any way of knowing that, and that's the gamble there. The waste, not the wastewater, yeah, that fund still, the reserves stay pretty healthy with that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is your water fund.
Right.
Even with taking money out of that, we're still projecting fund balances in that, 3.5 to, or this is cash in excess of what we've identified,
Right.
in that 3.5 to 3.8 range, the sewers, and probably that same amount, roughly, 2.8 to 3.6. So even with taking that money out, we're still projecting very healthy fund balances within those two.
Well,
two
if
funds.
something should get handed down that we do need to do some facility changes or whatever, we usually don't have to swallow that in 1 year. You know what I mean? Andy, we've usually been able to ration that out over. I mean, I guess I'm maybe looking towards using some of those reserve funds.
Well, if something went really sideways, we could bond for that emergency.
Correct.
We could, or another alternative is to kind of do two parts with water and sewer. Funds with some reserves and also have an inter-fund loan, so you can have a combination, so you're not taking all of it out of the water sewer.
And we have to pay those back, the ones we loan at the prevailing rate or whatever. I see you had that 4%.
Yeah, typically we've been at 4%.
I would like to leave the staffing proposals as they are, and if we didn't bond for it, people don't feel comfortable, I would feel comfortable taking some funds from these funds Reserves, yeah.
Either.
Yeah, because those balances are more than healthy, and I would feel comfortable with that.
Now, I'd like to keep the fire inspector, because I'm looking down the road that, you know, I think in a few years, we're gonna be looking at maybe possible having a full-time fire department, so I think, get one position now that maybe will kind of put us down the road a little bit from having to fight the big bullet.
I guess my question would be, and I'm only asking this because I'm trying to determine, I wish Chief was here tonight, could I be able to answer it? Because who's currently doing the fire inspection? Is it just the fire chief, or is there other?
The commercial fire inspection is currently being done by the chief.
Okay.
Yeah, and all the rest were by the building department, correct?
Yeah, but remember, those are two separate duties.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
inspection of commercial fire is done by the fire department.
Yeah.
Fire chief, building inspections are done by the building department.
And how many inspections, building inspections a year are we talking?
But, you know, it varies. I'm trying to think from the commercial side of things, and unfortunately Mike's not here. I want to say 80 to 100 buildings.
That sounds like a number he floated before.
Yeah, you know, when it comes to the residential, that's all dependent on permits that are issued, so.
And like I said, I'm not opposed to the idea of a fire inspector. It's more of the justification of it. And, you know, the mayor's correct. We're going to eventually lead to where we're going to have a full-time fire department. I just don't want to get wages and people outpacing what the people out here, what the people who, the citizens are getting in return. If you have more service, that's great, but when the cost of living is going up 3%, 4%, 5%, and people's incomes are only going up 2.5% or 3%, it makes it hard to play catch up.
I mean, those are all good points. I would encourage you, if you haven't read the report on what wages are doing across all industries, because this does a really good job. It's higher than that 2.5% to 3% that you've talked about. We're in a competitive market when it comes to hiring employees. I think we've done a good job as staff proposing a budget increase that's mindful of the competition that we're having. Now, I think it's also a great conversation piece on the impact it's having on the local taxpayers. Like I said, and I think that's part of the conversation. What you guys need to think about between now and probably next Thursday is the direction you gave us was to come to you with a budget that maintains what we're currently doing. That's the best option of that is what we presented at our last truth and taxation hearing, with the caveat that the one thing that was added was the additional debt for the fire truck and the additional position. That's what's over and above the services that are being provided in 2024. That's why we highlighted those tonight, was to say, when we go back to May, the original direction we were given from the council was, please provide us with a budget that maintains our services for 2025 based off of 2024. They said those are the two items, was a new fire truck, which you guys have already authorized. Now, like I said, we don't have to make a determination on that. That can wait until next year. We've got monies identified in reserves that we could use to make that first payment. And so you do have some time. So if there's a desire to remove that debt portion, you could do that, lower it by about 1%, and then revisit the thing again next year. Like I said, I think what we'll do based off, like I said, a lot of this is new for you tonight. It gives you just over a week to think about. We can come with a couple different options, and we've done that in the past. Mm-hmm. One with the preliminary budget that we presented at the Truth and Taxation hearing. One with elimination of the fire debt levy. One with elimination of the fire position. And one with elimination of both the fire position and the debt. I think that gives you 4 options to really think about and mull over between now and the 19th of December.
Because 1%'s about 80,000, am I correct on that?
Correct.
Okay.
I think those options sound great. I think we'll land on one of them.
Sure.
There's 4 options there. Do you guys think there are any other options that you want Matt and Andy to go after, or are you comfortable with the 4?
Given the time frame, I think that's what we have to look at there. You're not gonna all of a sudden-
And I will say too, when we talk about that fire position, that budget includes a March start date. So when you're looking at that 94,000, that's a, you know, that's a quarter of the year into it, so.
I'm comfortable with those 4.
I would agree.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. We have no unfinished business. Under new business, we have proposal from BC Real Estate Partners for redevelopment of the city-owned Franklin Street site. Miles?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, basically what we're gonna discuss and we're looking for your okay would be to accept a development proposal that we received for the redevelopment of the Franklin site. Just for reference here, I put it on a map and put that yellow box around it. So this is a project that we've been working on for years to get this area redeveloped. And just to give a little quick history here, this dates back to 2016 when the EDA first moved to purchase the clinic site, which is kind of the eastern half of the block. And then after that, we had talked with some developers about doing a project. And then a developer said, well, why don't we go with a bigger project? And then at that same time, we were talking with FEMA and they said, hey, there's dollars available for flood buyout. So then that got us going down that path. So that's 2019. By the time we get to 2020, then we're signing agreements with the developer that we had identified at that time. Then we had a pandemic that kind of slowed things down. And then other things slowed us down. So it was 2022 by the time the FEMA grant finally got approved. 2023, we spent purchasing all the buildings on the left side of the block, on the west side of the block. And then 2024, we said, well, let's put a new request for proposals out, see if we can identify a developer for this site. So that's kind of the history. Now in November, we received 3 proposals for how the site could be redeveloped. And then these were reviewed by the EDA finance team, by the EDA board, by city staff. We actually had the developers come in this room and spent a chunk of the day with them, kind of pitching their proposals and answering questions and all that stuff. So we went through a pretty rigorous process to try to sort these and rank them in a way that made sense. So out of the 3 proposals that we received, the one I think that pretty much everybody thought was the best and the best fit came from Granite City Real Estate Partners. They're based up in St. Cloud. What they are proposing is a development that they are calling The Landing. It'd be an apartment complex, about 79 units. That might change. Approximately $17 million project. And then this would be a 2025 project. So this would roll out pretty fast. They did say, hey, we're going to be looking for some sort of public assistance in the form of a housing TIF district just to make the numbers work. As I said, 79 units, and you can kind of see the breakdown of the units there. That's going to change. So this is just kind of the proposal. Once they get into the site and really start doing the engineering, that's when everything's going to get finalized. But this is kind of the broad brush proposal, I guess is what I would say. This is kind of what they think the site plan would look like, and that's obviously subject to some change here once we get out and get working on the site. But, it would envision the building on the east side of the site. It would be ground level parking that you would drive into, and then 3 floors of apartments up above it. then I think some sort of a rooftop amenity to take advantage of the fact that it's by the river and so forth. The northwest corner of the block, that would be stormwater pond. Those are the lots that we bought with the FEMA grant. So that needs to remain city owned, and then that'll become a stormwater retention feature. And then southwest corner of the block, probably parking. This might change. So this is just kind of what they proposed, and this is what we thought looked pretty good. So the EDA board discussed it a lot, and ultimately everybody, I think, was pretty unanimous that GC Real Estate Partners was probably the way to go. And the reasons were, one, that gave us the highest number of units. That's more people living in and around the downtown, bigger impact on the downtown. The developer has a lot of experience. They've done a lot of projects in greater Minnesota, rural Minnesota, so they're really familiar with the area. It's a bigger developer, so they've got some real capabilities that they can deploy to make this thing happen. They talked about having an on-site manager for these apartments, which everybody thought that was a big advantage to have that. It is the best fit for the site in terms of scale and use. The developer does have experience, using housing TIF in the past, so they're familiar with that process. And then the developer really was emphasizing we would go right away. This is a 2025 project. We want to go. So for all those reasons, that's why the EDA board thought, well, yeah, Granite City Real Estate Partners would be what they would recommend. Assuming that that's acceptable to the council, next steps in this project, let's say we go with these guys. Next step would be to complete what's called a gap analysis, and that's just going to help us figure out what the correct amount of public assistance would be. Then after that, we would put together a purchase agreement and a development agreement, get that all signed. Then we would come back and talk about a housing TIF district to help make the project work. Then we launch into the planning process, and then construction would take off after that. So probably 12 or 15 months, I would say, and then the thing is done. So what we're requesting is just that city council say, okay, let's accept that proposal from GC Real Estate Partners and move this thing forward. So with that, any questions?
A couple of comments. It doesn't bind us anything at this point. We're basically simply saying we're going to move forward working with this developer on coming to those final agreements. Secondly, as you noted earlier tonight, that was part of the work that's being looked at for the Franklin site redevelopment that we authorized Mike and the staff to move forward with. You may recall there's still a sewer line, or sewer main that goes right through the middle of that property that needs to be relocated. So we're already going down that process of getting that site really finalized for this development. So.
Miles, is there any garages on that?
You mean like external garages?
Is
I
there-
think most of the parking would be under the building, just on the bottom level of the building. So you'll just drive in. That'll be like one gigantic garage, I guess.
Miles, can you explain, just so people know how a TIF works?
Yes.
Because, what you say is public assistance, and it means something different than that.
Right. Yep. That's a good question, Tim. Basically, if we do a housing TIF district, really the money comes from the developer. They pay their property taxes. That goes to the county. The county's going to slice off a certain portion of it that'll go back to the developer to help reimburse certain qualifying expenses. So that's just the stuff involved in helping to get the stuff built. So there's really no public tax dollars involved. It's the developer that's paying it in to start, and then later they'll get a slice of that back. And then as part of that, because it's a housing TIF district, a certain percentage of the units will have to be offered to people with lower or more moderate income. So there's a public benefit that comes with this too. And the other thing is too, we're going through a process now to validate that this assistance is actually necessary. In other words, if there's no assistance, the project doesn't work and it doesn't happen. So we have what's called the but-for test. So I mean, we're gonna validate that this is absolutely necessary to make this project viable for the developer to do.
So just because somebody says they need it, doesn't mean that they get it. They still have to prove, and that's what Miles is referring to as a but-for test. You know, to dive in a little bit deeper on the TIF, and I think this is an important aspect for the public to understand, because they hear that, they hear public subsidy, they hear why this group and why not somebody else. And I would say, first off, we have several TIF districts throughout the city, so it is a tool that we use many times. I think the best way to look at it is, say that property today is paying $10 in taxes. They will continue to pay $10 in taxes. What that increment is the improvement that's made to that property goes back to the developer. So let's say it goes from $10 a year to $100 a year. That $90 in extra taxes is what goes to the developer for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Usually 15, 20 years. And then once that's paid off, that full amount goes back on the tax roll. So sometimes the argument is, well, we're not getting those taxes right away. And I would say, well, what are they paying today?
I
Yeah.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
It was more of the clarification, so
Yep,
people.
and that's good because people have misunderstandings about it. The key thing is it's not public dollars, it's just the developer is gonna be paying it, and then the developer will get some chunk of that back.
True, this is a huge benefit to the community. And
Yep, yeah.
that was the point I wanted to make, is
Yep.
we're not putting public assistance in. It's a program we.
Tool that's available to us.
TIFs are a great program for expanding your community.
Anything else for Miles?
Like I said, there's still some steps. This really just moves us forward with us to work with these guys. We may get 2-3 months into it and realize this isn't going to work with them, but this is really that first step in that process.
Well, I would move that we approve this proposal.
I'll second that.
Motion by Tim, second by Chad to approve. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Miles.
All right, thank you very much.
This is a good one.
Yep.
Setting date for city administrator annual performance review.
Evening, Mayor and Council. It's been a whole year already, really fast. So yeah, we need to set a date for Matt's annual review. I did back in September based on conversations last year. Send out an email just asking if we wanted to change up the process. So far it sounds like we want to keep it as is. I had one council person request kind of an option to gather a little bit more feedback from staff, so I'll work with that individual to gather that. But looking, I believe Matt and I chatted, the first regular meeting in January is a good option, which is the 14th, I believe. Is that good? So like prior years, we would have the session prior to the council meeting, and then move into the council meeting after that.
Everything like 4 o'clock or 4:30, or how much time?
Usually we do it at 4:30. We've done it in the past.
4:30.
So.
Mm-hmm.
I'd make a motion to set it for the 14th at 4:30.
I'll second it. Motion by Chad, second by myself to set that review for Matt on the 14th at 4:30. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both say nay. Motion carries. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kelly. Governance, we have minutes, reports from committees, boards, or commissions. We have the library board minutes from October 28, 2024, and the Price board minutes from November 4th, 2024. Chief Gifferson, you have anything for us? Andy, you got anything else for us?
Nothing for me, please.
All right, Kelly, you have anything else for us? All right, Mark, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight.
All right, thanks, Mark. Pat, let's start with you tonight.
Nothing.
All right, Chad.
Nothing.
Yeah. Tim.
Well, Chief didn't say it, but I will. I saw the photos from the police officers with the kids and for Christmas, and I think that's a great program, and appreciate our police department and our service industry reaching out to those people. As for sustainability committee, the southern half of the water and the runoff and all that program is in the works now. And, other than that, moving forward.
All right, thanks, Jim. Dave?
MMDC meeting would be a week ago tomorrow night. That was our quarterly meeting and went through some stuff with the auditors and that type of thing, and everything is Jim dandy as far as that part was concerned. The big topics is still transportation for elderly, or you don't have to be elderly, handicapped, whatever the case may be. McLeod County seems to be a little on the back side of that compared to the other counties, but we're going to get there one day. Aged is a huge factor, as we all know. We're getting older every day. But the thing of it is some people can't get out of their homes. In fact, we were at the meeting in Broughton last week, one day, whatever it was, and they talked about two 95-year-old ladies in Broughton that are they want to get out and move a little bit, but they have some where they got 2 steps out, can't get out down to the car and whatnot. And behold, they're talking about these 2 young ladies still driving. So you see them tooling around town when they get when they get out of their house. But accessibility, people don't want to move. Loneliness is another one where someone's stuck in their house and can't get out. And counting on things like Meals on Wheels to do some sort of a check on a person if they're in the program. And I've not visited anyone myself that's stuck in the house, but I can imagine that you're looking at 4 walls every day and out the window, and you don't get to see much now except for white and brown. But so those are still big factors that are being done. The business side of things, they're doing small business loans, and at this point in time, I believe there is no businesses that have started in the last 5 years that have gone default, if I understand it right. So I think that's a good, they're not $1 million loans, because we don't get that kind of money, or the MMDC doesn't get that kind of money to fluctuate with, but it's in the hundreds of thousands, and every little dollar seems to help a business get off the ground and make some progress. So, other than that, why, nada.
Thanks, Dave. Matt?
Just a couple of reminders. Our next council meeting is next Thursday, December 19th at 5:30. So you may recall we moved that up from our Christmas Eve. That was when it was originally scheduled. So next Thursday, December 19th at 5:30. Also, our organizational meeting is Thursday, January 2nd at 5:30. That's just to appoint the boards and committees and any other things that may, come about. And then just obviously, I know we'll have one more meeting before the holidays, but just a couple reminders. City offices will be closing at noon on Christmas Eve, and they'll be closed all day on Christmas Day and all day on New Year's Day. So, and that's it.
Want to touch on our meeting over in Broughton?
Yeah, we had a good meeting. The League of Minnesota Cities did a kind of a regional meeting where it was hosted by the city of Broughton. I think it was actually just representatives from Hutchinson and Broughton were there just to talk about things that are going on in the region, impacts. Talked about things like housing and daycare, and really the league kind of uses that an opportunity to get out, hear from communities, and they'll go back and use that for some of their legislative priorities and just kind of get to know what's going on, especially out here in rural Minnesota. So it was a good meeting. They started doing these regional meetings, I think, right around COVID, and it's been something they found to be very successful for them. So.
All right, that it?
That's it.
All righty. We do have a position open on the utility board. Had talked to Jeremy Carter and the rest of the commissioners, and they brought Tom Lambert forward to fill in the new position that Anthony Hansen is done with his term. So be bringing Tom up for consideration for being put on there. The other thing, just want to thank the whole community. I don't know if you guys been out or just take time and drive around and look at the Christmas lights. I mean, they are, You know, the park again is wonderful. Had a chance to go down by Timmy. Timmy, your neighborhood is well lit up. The one on Bradford's enjoyable again. Watch the guys sing. So just have a chance to get out and look at the Christmas lights because everybody's doing a great job this year. So with that, let's go home and enjoy our lives.
Moment to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Tim to adjourn. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried.